right. Actually, the camera's got my face on it. This is going to be a challenge for me. Does that work? All right. This is gonna be really hard for me. So I'm going to move forward, assuming the thing. It did. Here's my challenge: is that. Okay. Keeping these two screens coordinated is going to be a little bit of trouble for me. Why this study is happening. This grew out of a discussion that Christy and I had one day where I was telling her, do you know all the miracles that God is doing right now in the Middle East? You know, it's absolutely amazing. And she ran into Pastor Nate at the dentist's office, and she was telling him about that. And he was telling her that he was going to be doing a sermon on end times and being prepared. And so he asked if I would be interested in teaching this. That's where we got going from. Israel is a small place in the world, but it is almost the center of the world geopolitically. It is what the world revolves around. So this is my general outline. I'm going to give you some real scriptural, prophetic. You can read my outline. You cannot see my outline. There's my outline. Okay. As I'm saying, I'm getting out of sync, and she's giving me things. I thought she was telling me to move along because I was dragging on. Oh, it's going to be a challenge. It may take longer than an hour. I'm not going to read my outline to you, but this is just a general outline of how I'm going to approach it tonight. I'll take a couple of diversions. If you ask me questions, I will allow you to get me off topic, but I'm really good at coming right back on topic. Okay. Start off with a little background material. There's different kinds of prophecy, and specifically I'm going to be dealing a little bit with sealed, veiled, and dual prophecy. Some of you may have heard the terms. An example here of some sealed prophecy. Daniel, roll it up and seal the words. Seal up what the seven thunders have said and don't write it down. The purpose of a seal is to make something complete, to protect the contents, or to save the contents for a specific time in the future. For instance, a will can be sealed. You open the will, the reading of the will. There's also a veiled type of prophecy. And what's the purpose of a veil? Oh boy, this is going to be really hard for me. Flipping around back and forth. Yeah, I'm going to let. Good luck here. Yeah, I think I have it. Wait, button. The right arrow. Let me see where I'm at now, because I got ahead of myself. I'm going to have to look at this for just a moment because what I'm doing I can't get back up. All right, there's sealed prophecies. You just went ahead of me. Okay, purpose of the seal, now a veil. There we go. Give me a veiled prophecy. The purpose of a veil is to cover something. Are we on the right one? Yes. Okay. Is to cover something and to make it obscured. Maybe completely, maybe just partially obscured. And then, go ahead. So, an example here is, this is a scripture out of Daniel where the king of Babylon having a party with all of his friends. He got things he wasn't supposed to. He got the temple goblets, and they were drinking out of that. And a disembodied hand writes on the wall, and he writes these words, Mene, Mene, Tekel Parsin. They had no idea what that meant, so they called for Daniel to come and read it to them. And Daniel looks and says, well, what this means is God's weighed and numbered the days of your reign, and they're up. Basically, you're done. And the Babylon fell that night. The prophecy, when the words were written on the wall, it was obscured. They had no idea what it meant. When Daniel came in and gave the explanation, it's kind of like the veil's ripped away. It's very plain. Before the time, you cannot understand it. After the time, it's plain as day. So go on to the next one. All right, I've got myself synchronized. Dual prophecy. Sometimes prophecies are in the Bible are dual. What it means is they are fulfilled more than once. The first time may be a partial fulfillment, and then a later complete fulfillment. Go ahead and click this one. We'll see if we're going to work together now. So at the Pentecost, the people were speaking in tongues, and people didn't understand what was going on. So Peter got up and he raised his voice and he said, these people aren't drunk as you suppose. It's only 9 a.m. No, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on the people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. And he says, that's what happened here. Here's this prophecy of Joel, and this is fulfilled here before you. But Joel's prophecy went on further. It was a much longer prophecy. And he said later on, I will show wonders in the heavens above and in the signs in the earth below, and blood and fire, billows of smoke, and the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. It fulfilled the first prophecy, but it wasn't complete. It's fulfilled a second time in the days, in the end times. It will be fulfilled again. So go ahead. So I'm going to get into a number of prophecies that have been in the history of Israel that have been very clearly fulfilled up to a point, really of the establishment and the events of Israel. The promised land was promised by God to Abraham. He said very specifically, he's going to establish his covenant through Isaac. By my covenant, I will establish with Isaac. I'm going to make him a nation, but very clearly with Isaac. And he also excluded Ishmael. With Ishmael, he said, it's through Isaac your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave a nation also, because he is your offspring. So it's where the Ishmaelites, the Arabs, have come from. So God was very clear on who was going to be receiving the promised land. Now the promised land was described. He says he's going to give him everything from the, I can't point it out here. You have the pointer. It's the red button on there. Down at the bottom below the diagonal red line is the this is being a real challenge here. So from the Wadi of Egypt, which is a dry riverbed just south of that diagonal red line at the south end of Israel, up to the Euphrates at the top, the land of the Hittites, the Canaanites, the Kizzites, the Moabites, all these people. So this area outlined in kind of a purple is the promised land as promised to Abraham. That green area is kind of where they are today. So the next slide here, this is the land that was shown to Moses. Moses was taken to Mount Nebo, and he was not allowed to enter into the promised land, but he was shown this. So go to click again, dear. This is the panorama from the top of Mount Nebo. Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, the whole region, the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, "This is the land promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to your descendants as I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over to it." So another map, when Joshua crossed over and conquered to it, this pink area is the area he actually conquered. He didn't conquer all of the land promised to Abraham. Go on to the next one. I'm going to show you something by a little bit of scale here. Shrunk that down. These two maps are the same scale. You can see how much Solomon expanded the land. He took it up to the Euphrates River at the top. He took it down to the Wadi. What he is missing is in the upper left, he's missing the land of the Hittites, which is part of Lebanon, or all of Lebanon, and part of Syria. So he didn't get all of the land. Israel has never really occupied all of the land promised to Abraham. So we have also prophecy of a divided kingdom. God told Solomon, because he's going to split your kingdom, because you just haven't done what I've asked you. You haven't kept me first. You've gone your own way, and I'm going to take the kingdom away from you. And I'm going to give part of it to one of your subordinates. The subordinate he gave it to was Jeroboam. And he told Jeroboam, I'm going to give you 10 of the tribes. Rehoboam's going to keep Judah, the Levites didn't have a tribe of their own. They just had 10 cities. They didn't have a land of their own. They just had 10 cities. So Jeroboam took the 10. Was going to take the 10 tribes, and they were called Israel, and then the southern kingdom was called Judah. Rehoboam, Solomon's son, was now king after Solomon's death, and the people came to him and said, "Hey, can you take it easy on us? Your dad Solomon was pretty rough." So he went to his advisors and he said, "What should we do?" And his advisor says, "Well, tell him when your dad beat you with whips, I'm going to beat you with scorpions. I'm going to be much rougher on them." And so Israel looked and said, when Israel saw what the king refused to listen to them, they answered, "What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, Israel. Look after your own house, David." So the Israelites went home. But as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah, Rehoboam still ruled over them. Rehoboam kept the southern kingdom of Judah, and the northern 10 tribes were then the land of Israel. But God prophesied. God told them, if you obey me, I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to hold you. If you don't obey me, you're going to have all of the problems. I'm going to set another king over you. I'm going to be, basically you're exiled, kicking you out of the land. You're going to be taken away. So this was fulfilled for the northern kingdom, Israel, in 2 Kings. Assyria invaded the land and deported the Israelites to Assyria. And he settled them in some towns in Assyria. The same thing happened to Judah some years later. Because of their disobedience, he carried them off to Babylon. But one of the things that what happened at the time was a thing called deportation and resettlement, or population transfer. If you take a people and you move them out, and you bring other people and you move them in, you effectively destroy any natural and cultural identity they had. Imagine, if you will, taking New Jersey. Take half the people, and we ship them off to various places in Texas. Then we pull some people from Texas and some people from Oklahoma and maybe some more people from Florida, and we move those to New Jersey. And you've got a mess. And the longer they're there, the less you have ability of bringing those people back and resettling them. So he brought people in from elsewhere and resettled them in their place. For 70 years, they couldn't come back. Imagine these New Jerseyites. New Jerseyings? Okay. Forget about it. Okay. Imagine all these people, they've been living in Texas for 70 years, and you can go back. What do I want to go to New Jersey for? This is home. There's hardly anybody there. So this is referred to as the diaspora or diaspora. Basically, the people are dispersed. They've taken, the diaspora specifically refers to Jewish people. The event is the diaspora, where the people are living outside of Israel. But there is a prophecy of restoration from Jeremiah. He says, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I'm going to come and fulfill my good promise and bring you back home. I'm going to gather you, bring you back home, gather from all the wide places you are, and I'm going to bring you back to the place you started from, out of exile. That's Bob's paraphrase version of the Bible. And Daniel, well, he was reading the prophecy of Jeremiah, and he recognized, now is the time. It's 70 years. I understood from the scriptures, according to the word of the Lord given to Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolation of Jerusalem would last 70 years. Time's up, or just about up, and he is expecting people to return. And there was a restoration. We read about it in Ezra and Nehemiah. What I didn't realize until I was preparing for this, there's actually 4 waves of people coming back. But in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, King Cyrus said he's appointed to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Time to go. And he took things back. So going to the first restoration, Sheshbazzar, who's a prince of Judah, took anybody that wanted to go. Everybody on the bus, we're going to go. Gave them gold, silver, supplies, 5,400 articles of silver and gold. They were flush with cash, and he sent them back to go rebuild the temple. Some years later, there was another group that went. Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was 10 greats grandfather of Jesus. This shows just how God controls things, because he is in the line of the king from David. So all the way back from David, the exile, return, the future king, his line is assured. 50,000 people came back, just ordinary people, bunch of priests, Levites, bunch of livestock. A third group came back with Ezra, another 7,000 people, and he brought judges and magistrates to help organize the people. It was help basically setting up the local government. And then under Nehemiah came back again, and he brought with him royal letters. He brought authority. He brought materials, timber, and an armed escort to get things done. So God had this planned. When the people disobey, they're going to be exiled. I'm going to bring them back, and they're going to be a nation again. And I'm going to take a little bit of a diversion. It's one of these cases where I have to tell you a story to tell you a story. So this is the story I'm telling you. Daniel had a vision, and it was of a ram with 2 horns that no one could stand against. And he didn't know what that was until the angel explained to him that the ram with his 2 horns was the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. And there was going to be coming another kingdom. So he saw a ram with a single horn between its eyes. And he attacked and hit the goat. The goat hit the ram, shattered its horns. We know from historical context today that this was Alexander the Great. He took out the Medes and the Persians, came in like a lightning flash, and it's kind of funny, the word goat, we use it today. Goat stands for greatest of all time. So somebody really great is a goat. But Alexander never had a succession plan. So when he died, his 4 generals just kind of took over the management of the kingdom, and they kind of each went their own way, and they didn't do a very good job of it. And so another horn grew up out of the 4 in the vision, and it grew up until it reached the heavens. We know this to be Antiochus Epiphanes. Epiphanes was the name he gave himself. It means God manifest. A little bit of ego thing going on, I think. A little bit crazy too, because behind his back they referred to him not as Epiphanes, but Epimanes, which meant the mad. And he'd performed what was called the abomination of desolation. So in Daniel 8, 9-13, out of one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east toward the beautiful land. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, and it threw down some of the starry host down to the earth and trampled on them. It set itself up to be as great as the commander of the army of the Lord. It took away the daily sacrifice from the Lord, and his sanctuary was thrown down. He was truly an evil man. And he went in and he sacrificed swine on the altar of God. He spread the blood all over the implements of the temple, and he forced the priests to eat the pig flesh. So the reason I told you that story is so I can tell you this next story. Jesus saw or prophesied about the destruction of Jerusalem. He said to his disciples who were admiring all the temples, the temple and all the buildings around it, and he says, "Do you see all these things?" he asked. "Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." And then he went on to say, "When you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." Jesus is talking about a future event in the tearing down of the temple. Not one stone will be left on another. But he's clearly talking about a future event in the past. They all would have known what the abomination of desolation is, or the abomination that causes desolation. But he's saying, watch out for it. It's going to happen. Here's this dual nature of prophecy again. So this was fulfilled in AD 70. The Romans laid siege to Jerusalem for 5 months, destroyed it, and not one stone was left on another. When you think of the Western Wall in Israel, that's not the Western Wall of the temple, that's the Western Wall of the town. The temple was actually inside of that. And so the temple was completely torn down. So I want to talk a little bit about this prophetic need for Israel. Because the temple has been torn down. And Jesus is talking about, watch out for this event that has to happen in a temple. So how do we understand this? For 1878 years, there was no Israel. How do we understand that during that period of time, what Jesus is talking about? Because how can there be an Israel when before 1948 there hadn't been an Israel for almost, for 1878 years? How do we understand these things? It must be figurative. It must be metaphorical. It must be this. And then we see Israel come back and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, maybe he's literal about some of these things. In Isaiah, he said, who has ever heard such a thing? Who has ever seen things like this? Can a country be born in a day, or a nation brought forth in a moment? No sooner is Zion in labor than she gives birth to her children. For 1878 years there was no Israel, and in one day there was a nation. Zechariah says that Israel is going to be unbroken. And he says, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all of the nations. They won't be able to touch this land. How do we understand this prior to 1948? But we look at it now, a lot of things must be very literal. And the meaning was veiled before 1948. We couldn't understand that it could be a literal thing. The veil was lifted. Today, the veil keeps getting pulled away. We're doing the dance of the seven veils here. We keep pulling away the veils. In Luke, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. This is Jesus talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. But he says Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. What does that mean to us? How do we understand that if there is no Jerusalem? If it's already been destroyed? There's nothing we can do with this scripture. Hence this dual nature of the prophecy. It's going to be torn down. But then there's got to be a restoration for it to be torn down. And Deuteronomy, Israel's going to be completely restored. If you've been banished to the most distant land under heavens, from there the Lord God will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you back to the land that belonged to your ancestors, and you will take possession of it, and you will make you a prosperous and numerous nation, a more prosperous and numerous nation than your ancestors. That's never happened till today. It's happened now. So we have this land that I refer to as Israel, and most of us do here. A lot of people won't call it Israel, they'll call it Palestine. So what's Palestine? It's a name given to it in AD 135 by the Emperor Hadrian. Palestine comes from the name Philistine, which has a literal meaning of a hostile or an invader.
It's asking, what is the origin of the term?
Not yet. Slow down. Amir Tsafati is the head of an organization called Behold Israel. He's a Messianic Jew, a speaker, preacher. I wouldn't say a pastor because he doesn't have a church of his own, but he has a ministry, one-time major in the Israeli army, and is a one-time tour guide for Israel. So I would love to take a tour of Israel with him. But he describes this fairly well. Now you can click it.
It's asking, what is the origin of the term Palestine, Palestinians? It goes back to 135 AD when the pedophile Caesar of Rome, Adrian, wanted to finish with the Jewish people and rename the land that was then called Judea and rename it after our Old Testament foes, the Philistines, to humiliate us. So he named it Palestina. So it has nothing to do with Arabs. It has to do with, basically humiliate the Jewish people and naming things after the Philistines, who, by the way, were Greek. They were not even Arabs. So there is no Palestine in the Bible. There were Philistines, and they were not of Arab origin at all. So that's who they are. The Arabs began to use the term Palestinians only in the mid-60s. That's it. When Israel already declared statehood in 1948, up until that point, Arabs were just calling themselves Arabs. But when they saw that the term Palestine is now free and Jews don't use it anymore, the Soviets decided to create the PLO and to establish a counterbalance to the American growing influence, and thus created the Palestinian narrative. And it's all the Soviet propaganda. There were no Palestinians before. There were Arabs before. We have all of their literature from before 1948. It's the Jews that call themselves Palestinians because we followed the ancient name of the Romans, and that appeared on every map until we established finally our independent state once again, and then restored the name that was given to us: Judea, of course, and Israel.
Amir Tsarfati. Amir is his first name. Tsarfati. And the organization he has is Behold Israel.
Is asking, what is the origin of the term Palestine, Palestinians? It goes.
I am kind of hung up here on
Judea, of course, and Israel.
Okay. We had many years of desolation. In reality, the diaspora from the year 80-70 to until the 20th century, not many people lived in the land of Palestine. Various estimates at various times were anywhere from 100,000 to 500,000 people living in the land. It was, at that time, predominantly Muslim, but there were always a hunk of Jews there. There's also a fair amount of Christians there. In 1867, Mark Twain took a trip. He wanted to visit Israel. And he said, a desolation is here that not even imagination can grace with the pomp and life and action. I would not desire to live here. It is hopeless, a dreary and a heartbroken land. So during this time, there's not much, there's actually pictures taken during that time period of Jerusalem and stuff, but it's pretty, not a hopping spot. So in 1920 till 1948, we had something called the British Mandate for Palestine. The mandate was established by the League of Nations, which is the forerunner to the United Nations. They took this land, which had been part of the Ottoman Empire, and set it aside. And in the British Mandate, in 1917, in their articles, they said very specifically that it was the establishment of in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. That was the purpose. So we're talking 1917, we're taking this desolate land of Palestine, and we're going to make this, establish a national home for the Jewish people. Remember the date, because that's going to be important in just a minute. So I define this word, and I keep killing and pronouncing it differently every time, but diaspora. But there's a complementary term, aliyah. And aliyah is immigration to Israel. In Hebrew, it literally means to ascend or to go up. Aliyah is used to describe immigration to Israel, bringing Jews from the four corners of the earth to their biblical homeland. And it's the background of the Jewish constitution. It's the Jewish state. It's the return of the Jews to the land from the diaspora. This has a really important meaning to them. So if you immigrate to Israel as a Jew, you are performing Aliyah. So there have been several waves of Aliyah. What year did I say was it? 1917 was when the mandate was set. The first wave of Aliyah was 1882. 35,000 people, Jews, immigrated to Palestine. They're Russian Jews trying to get away from the problems with the assassination of Tsar Alexander. They created independent settlements. That some of those are still towns today. Second wave, right around World War I, right after World War, right around World War I, Russian Jews were fleeing socialist Russia, and they established the kibbutz movement. The kibbutz is like a commune, where they get together and they work together to have farms and for mutual protection and support. And they established a settlement that became Tel Aviv, their biggest city. Third Aliyah, after World War I, Russian and Ethiopian Jews are coming, and they settled in the Jezreel Valley, drained the marshes, and they also built the political framework for the Jewish homeland. A fourth wave of Aliyah, another 82,000 people came from Poland and Hungary. Fifth wave of Aliyah. The first four happened before the British Mandate. First three before the British Mandate. And the last two are after the British Mandate. We're talking about 450,000 people here. Remember I said the population was somewhere around 100,000 beforehand? We have 450,000 immigrating to Palestine, which today we call Israel. The demographics changed quite a bit. Suddenly it's 90% Jews. There aren't any fewer Muslims. There's just more Jews. Not any fewer Christians. There's just more Jews. Oops, I got myself ahead of myself here. So, all right, there's a sixth wave of Aliyah. I don't know if they recognize it as, they're calling it that. I'm calling it that. This year alone, up through October, 31,000 have immigrated. Imagine immigrating to Israel in the middle of a war. Some of them are coming specifically to join the military. Israel's Declaration of Independence says Israel will be open to Jewish immigration, Aliyah, and will be based on freedom, justice, peace, and will ensure equality of social and political rights to all inhabitants. All inhabitants, not just Jews. With before the current hostilities were going, before we split off big hunks of Israel in the Land for Peace thing, the Arabs, the Palestinians, were actually growing to the point where by this time they would have been able to outvote the Jews. But because some of the politics, there's fewer Arabs in what's defined as Israel. So I want to give you a little bit of a sense for the size of things here. So this is the map of Israel. And I want to overlay that. What? Okay. I want to overlay this with a map of Michigan. We all have a good feel for how big Michigan is. Look how tiny Israel is. It's just a little place. I got another comparison for you with New Jersey, Ronnie. The population is almost exactly the same. The land area is almost exactly the same. So think about it. We've got this nation, the size of New Jersey with the population of New Jersey. And it is located in the Middle East. You see that little bitty red spot there? That's Israel. You got all of North Africa and the Middle East here with the Muslim nations marked in blue. When you hear the protests, they're talking about protesting against the expansion of Israel. Turkey's president rallied against the growing threat of expansion from Israel. Islam began in 608 or 680 or something with a 6 and an 8 in there in Saudi Arabia, and has grown it's expanded. Who's doing the expansion? If anything, Israel has shrunk. Another view here of the earth. The dark green are states that their government is Islam. They're Islamic states. Light green are Islam as the official religion. And orange has a Muslim majority. And the blue ones are the secular states. And you really can't see.
What are the ones in Europe?
What? They're not, I think they're not included in this map. They're not color coded in this map.
Okay, so it looks like Europe can have a little.
Yeah, you've got a lot of Muslim, but it really shows you the expansion of Islam in this world, as opposed to the expansion of Israel that we keep hearing about. So, most of us here are old enough to remember all of the Land for Peace stuff. I want to explain a little bit of that. It'll give you a different perspective. In 1967, Egypt attacked Israel. This was the Six-Day War. The old joke at the time was, what's the difference between Arab tanks and Israeli tanks? It was Arab tanks had backup lights. Israel pushed Egypt right out of the Sinai Peninsula, and they took over it. I don't know if any of you remember that when the Suez Canal was closed, because you had Israel on one side and you had Egypt on the other, and how do we get ships through there when they're at war with each other? In 1978, we had the Camp David Accords. And the Camp David Accords says, we really need to have a way to settle this up. And the Camp David Accords with Jimmy Carter. They basically agreed to give the Sinai Peninsula back. Didn't get around to it. In 79, we had the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty, which was Bill Clinton saying, you need to have this treaty and give this land back. And then in 1993, with Bill Clinton in office, Israel backed out of the Sinai Peninsula and says, okay, it's all yours. Land for peace. In the year 2000, we had the Camp David Summit, which again was Bill Clinton. And what they said was, what you really need to do is give them the West Bank and Gaza and some other land up north, for peace. And so the West Bank is Judah and Samaria. And then you've got Gaza in the south. So Israel gave up Judah and Samaria. When we read the Bible, the New Testament, it's all Judah and Samaria that we read about. So this next map is Israel proper. Some of you went on that trip to Israel a year or so ago. I went in 74. In 74, these areas of Gaza and the West Bank were part of Israel. So we were able to travel through there as if there was no difference. Jerusalem, you can see, is kind of sitting here surrounded on three sides by the West Bank, which is all under Palestinian control, or Arab control, however you want to put it. And then Gaza was some really prime farmland in Israel. Nice city, nice farmland. It was really a nice area. And they just handed it over. Here it is. Moved their people out and gave it to them. So this is Israel today. In Scripture, Jesus said we would hear about wars and rumors of wars. I did a quick search. What wars have we got going on right now? That's a list I got, just that fast. There's also things going on in various countries in Africa where Christians and Jews both are being killed and taken out by Muslim terrorists. Do look, you want to get something scary sometime, read about how many people, Christians, have been killed this year. I didn't look it up for this, but it's a huge number. But wars and rumors of wars, these are signs of birth pains. So I'm getting into the Israel-Palestine conflict, as we're calling it today. Now, the players are the Jews. We all know who the Jews are. There's a bunch of Christians there in Israel. The Muslims, there's 5 major factions and a dozen more. Kind of like Christians, you got a lot of factions and stuff. But Muslims got 2 primary, which are the Sunni and the Shia. And make no mistake, they like each other just about as well as did Protestants and Jews in Ireland, during the early 20th century. They don't get along, but they hate the Jews more. We have Druze, which is it's a branch off of the Shia, but it doesn't call itself Muslim. The rest of them call them heretics, and they're kind of a mishmash of whatever they pulled together. I think it was New Age before there was a New Age. So these are the people in the area. So these are the countries. This is a Middle East map. We've got Iran, which we keep hearing Iran. They're the ones pulling a lot of strings on all the war. They're staying back, but they're protected. They've got Iraq and Syria and Jordan and Saudi Arabia between them and Israel. We've got Yemen. Keep hearing about Yemen. Rockets getting fired out of Yemen. They're coming up in north and hitting Israel. Israel is not that green little blip. Israel is the white blip below the green blip. There it is. Yeah. Okay. My pointer here won't work there on the screen. We keep hearing about Syria and Lebanon. Lebanon is directly to the north, and Syria is kind of to the north of them, and kind of wraps around. And Jordan, trying to keep their head down. Israel has got, within it, has got Gaza and it's got the West Bank, both of which are mostly Sunni Muslim. So I started looking at what the demographics of the area are. And on this chart, left-hand side is Iran. This orange represents the Shia Muslims. So Iran is mostly Shia. Iraq is closer to a evenly balanced. Yemen has a small, a smaller, maybe a third of it is Shia. But remember, it's Iran, the Shia, that are really pushing things, pulling the strings. Lebanon's really interesting because Lebanon is right on the front lines of the war right now because Israel's pounding them because of the attacks that they were receiving. And they're pretty well balanced between Shia, Sunni, and Christian. So this change of power in Lebanon may force a change in the government to be a more friendly government towards Israel, because the Christians and even a lot of the Shia want good relationships with Israel, because Egypt and Jordan have good relationships with Israel. They've got treaties. And you can see Israel here, it's mostly Jewish. Got a good hunk of Sunnis, few Shias in there, few more Christians. So I want to go back to the other map here again. And let's look at this a little differently, these two maps.
Am I going forward or back?
Go forward.
Okay.
Go forward to go back, yeah. Okay, on Israel, we've got Israel. Down in the south, we've got, in Gaza, we've got Hamas, which are Sunni. In the north, in Lebanon, we've got Hezbollah, which is Shia. Iran is Shia. The Houthi in Yemen are Shia. So you can see they've been launching missiles up from Yemen. They've been launching missiles from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, and even from Iran at Israel. And most of them are Shia, except for Hamas, which is Sunni, which makes some really interesting dynamics. So, ongoing conflict. On October 7th, Hamas attacks Israel from Gaza. They fired rockets from Gaza. Hundreds of terrorists in jeeps and motorcycles came in. They invaded homes, they invaded campgrounds, they killed 1,200 people, 8,700 were wounded, and 250 were taken hostage. 251 were taken hostage. The atrocities that day, I can't even begin to describe them to you because I couldn't say those things in this kind of an environment. The Israeli government put together videos that they showed to reporters, to governments, and they all came out shocked. That video is available to people that want to watch it. I don't want to watch it. I've only heard little bits. But 3 miracles came out of this. First, the attacks were planned in advance to be a much bigger thing. They were going to be attacked from the north first, led off by Hezbollah, and Gaza would come. So they were going to be attacked from several sides all at one time. Israel thought something was up, so they're watching Hezbollah. They're watching the north. They're thinking something's going on. When this stuff started happening in the south, they thought that was a feint, something happening, and they didn't take their eyes off of the north until they realized we really got a problem down here, and they responded too late. But because Hamas jumped the gun, the others said, wait a minute, now Israel's really watching. If we come in, we're going to get slaughtered. You guys and you Sunnis down there, yeah, you're on your own. You know, good luck to you. We're not invading right now. But to look good, we're going to start launching some rockets. So they began firing rockets from Lebanon into Israel. 200,000 people have been displaced from their homes. They're living in hotels or wherever they can live with family members, wherever they can live somewhere else, because they can't be in their homes, because where their home is getting shelled on a daily basis. The second miracle is the nation woke up. They had a real progressive mindset, much like we do here in the U.S. They realized there's no two-state solution. They don't want a separate state. They want us dead. From the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. From the Jordan River all the way to the Mediterranean, get rid of the Jews. That's the river to the sea. Free of Jews. That's what they mean when they say that. That's literally what that means. They woke up and realized, you know what? We don't need to apologize for being where God has placed us. It has caused, it has caused a revival in the land, coming to God as Jews. Soldiers are even getting together and singing, I believe in the Messiah. Go ahead, I'm trying to see where I got ahead of myself and I can't back up on this slide, I think, if it's possible. No, because I'm recording, if I move ahead, I can't back up. So, I'm going to look at that one. September 13th, Iran attacked. 300 drones and missiles. These are much higher tech system than was coming in from Lebanon and from Gaza. The Iron Dome system was considered about 90% effective in shooting things down. Out of 300. If you do the math, it was like a 1 in 30. I did the math. It's like a 1 in 30,000 chance that they would do as well as they did. One injury. All those missiles, one injury, and it was a Bedouin, a Muslim Bedouin. September 17th, just a month or so ago, Israel has started an all-out, we're getting into this, and they were sneaky. 4,000 pagers blew up. You have to understand, Iran placed an order to a company in Taiwan for pagers for Hezbollah. And the order was sold to a front company in Taiwan that went through a front company in Hungary, which somewhere else. Today, in the news, Netanyahu admitted that they did this. The Israelis sold them those pagers. Those pagers were bombs. And so all of these people at a signal got a signal that says, hey, you've got a high security message coming in, you need to push a button to get the message. So they would get the thing out, and they push the button and the bomb would blow up. So these are only the top 4,000 people in Hezbollah. They've got these pagers. Lost hands, lost eyes, lost their lives.
Your 70 virgins are waiting.
I'm sorry?
Your 70 virgins are waiting.
Your 70 virgins are waiting. Yeah, I wasn't going there. It was all top people that got this. The ambassador from Iran to Lebanon, he got injured. One of the ministers of the Lebanese government, son got killed. The next day, a bunch of cell phones blew up, or walkie-talkies blew up. Same thing. You've taken out command and control of Hezbollah. They're afraid to use anything more technical than smoke signals to call each other. Go on one more. Now, see if I think we're back together. Yeah. So, after 1 year of the war, October 7th to October 7th, 240 missiles and drones had been fired at Israel. Prior to July, the only deaths caused by these were to horses, chickens, cows, and a bunch of fish. The bunch of fish was, there's a really interesting video of it. The rockets are coming into Haifa, and they missed and hit the harbor. And so there's a video of all these rockets going into the water and blowing up. Okay. First deaths occurred in July. 12 children, Druze children on a soccer field. A missile came in and got through the Iron Dome, and 12 children were killed. In total, 17 civilian deaths. October 1st, Iran launches another 200 ballistic missiles. And Iran's got the high-tech stuff. There's one fatality. And I don't know if it was the spent missile or one that got hit, but there's a video out there of this, looks like 2.5, 3 foot diameter cylinder tail end of a rocket, about 15, 20 feet long, landed on a Gazan crossing the street, a Palestinian crossing the street in Jericho. A Palestinian from Gaza was crossing the street in Jericho, and this missile body fell out of the sky on him. That was the one fatality out of the 200. You cannot tell me that God isn't protecting his people. Imagine firing 27,000 missiles into New Jersey and not hurting anybody. You can't drive a car across New Jersey without hitting somebody. God has promised never to abandon Israel. In Samuel, the Lord will not reject his people. In Kings, I will not abandon my people, Israel. In Romans, God's gift and his call are irrevocable. He has not turned his back on his people. There is a thought of, you'll hear it called replacement theology sometimes, and it is that, well, Christians have replaced the Jews as God's people. And no, they have a hardening of their heart for a time, but that time is almost up. Jesus said in the parable of the fig tree, as soon as the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you, this generation certainly will not pass away until all these things have happened. A veil is being lifted. We understand these twigs and tender leaves is the new Israel, 1948. Most scholars believe that now. So that generation at the outside, born in 1948, will not pass away before all these things come to pass. In Romans, the hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over. The day is almost here. Pastor preached, we're in the end times. Be prepared. Matthew, therefore keep watch, because you don't know on what day your Lord will come. We are truly living in biblical times. As I said, these veils are getting peeled away. We're dancing the dance of the 7 veils, and the veils are getting peeled away. Psalm 83, read it sometime. This describes the war of independence for Israel. It's fulfilled. There's other things that we know are going to happen. The order of these things, I don't know. Everybody's, depending on whether you're pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, pan-trib, whatever, these things all change orders and when things are going to happen. All I know is they're going to happen. At some point in time, Damascus is going to be destroyed, utterly destroyed. Nobody will be able to live in it again. It'll be like a sea of glass. There's going to be peace. This might be a double fulfillment thing, because one of the things that Donald Trump has said is the way to end this war is through victory. They've been held back, and I suspect, when he gets in, I suspect he's going to say, you got what you need, go get victory. When this happens, it takes out some of the people that would be opposing them that are not showing up in later on when we get down to the Ezekiel's war, because Ezekiel's war said specific people, and Lebanon and Syria aren't there. There's going to be false prophets and false messiahs. We've already seen some of those in our lives, and there's more out there. Natural calamities, boy, we hear about them every day. The rapture, don't know when. Anytime now. Anytime now. I'm okay with that. Ezekiel's war, I think I've got one more slide that I could use to do Ezekiel's war. I left it as an option. I'll take 2 more minutes if that's okay to do that. And then the Antichrist is going to make peace with Israel. And that there's going to be a third temple. There has to be a third temple in order for there to be an abomination of desolation by the Antichrist. One of the things people have been looking at here with this current conflict there, they keep saying, is this Ezekiel's war? Is this Ezekiel's war? And the answer is no, because the wrong people are in it. In Ezekiel's war, we talk about Rosh, Persia, Ethiopia, Put, Gomer, very specific nations. We know where those nations are, those places are. We're talking about Russia, we're talking about Persia, Ethiopia, probably Sudan, Turkey, Libya. Iran's in it, but they're doing things mostly remotely. Russia is on the outside, but they're supplying weapons. But they're going to be pulled in, and they won't be able to get out of it. Turkey, they're on the outside making noises, but they're not doing anything. Libya, they're keeping their mouths shut, not doing much right now. They're there, but not doing. So this is not Ezekiel's war. Ezekiel's war is coming. Most people think that there is this time of peace through victory, maybe, before Ezekiel's war. How long this time of peace, we don't know. And we're trying to see through this veil. And we're not sure how clear this veil is that we're looking through. Are there any other questions? All right, I'm done. I will.